Hello, all, and welcome to the continuation of Wiring a Pickguard Part 2. And a continuation again of converting the Stratocaster HH Blacktop to single coil pickups, which, as you already know, is already done. Now, unfortunately, I didn't record the soldering process because it just didn't dawn on me, and I just wanted to get it done and over with. So, while our soldering iron is still warming up, a few reminders about things. Something to cut wire. Something to strip your wire. Nice little small pad of sandpaper to scuff up your pots. Solder. Very important. And let me just say right now, let's see if the camera is supposed to be set up for autofocus. Focus. Okay, well, doesn't seem to want to focus. So anyways, well then. This is Sane Smart, gotten from the Amazonian place. Power to the makers. This is a tin lead wire. GW100G, diameter 1 millimeter. Activity rosin, model SN63PB37 flux 2.0% solder wire. And let me tell you right now, before I actually get to the pickguard already done, this stuff compared to the guitar fetish stuff I was using previous is awesome. If this is the type of stuff that Lawrence Petros uses with his LPD pedals and other makers and other guitar builders and that out there, yeah, this is definitely worth the money you pay for this. And I think it wasn't actually that bad. I think I said it in one of the previous videos. I think it was $12 for this spindle or spool. But once the soldering iron is up to temp, this thing melts quickly and sets quickly. So it's awesome in that regard. Unless you screw up, which, let's face it, a lot of people are wanting to jump on Ben's kind of soldering work. Well, in my defense, I haven't been doing a whole lot of soldering. And more so, I haven't actually soldered, I think, a Stratocaster pickguard in probably 2-3 years, if that. So, if that's said, let's put the rosin back, or the soldering wire back. And so, again, here's the pickguard assembled. Yes, with the lovely scratch here, that will probably go away more when I take the other layer of peel off. So, again, here is the soldering work. Oh, there we go. The focus actually works now. What do you know? So yes, a big mess of cables here, which a tip, if you get one of these little plasticky kind of tie-off things, keep those around because as you can see here, I centerized it, and then I wrapped it all around all this loose wire. The reason why this wire looks loose is because I thought it was a lot easier to actually connect the 3 leads. Let me just... These 3 pickup leads. Top one here is neck, middle one is bridge, bottom one is neck. Again, you can see my soldering job isn't exactly super great, but also at the same time, I've seen a lot worse. And my soldering on other spots isn't so bad. So these 2 wires here are ground and output that go to the output jack. These are all the grounds. There we go. These are all the grounds here that are from these pickups. These lace sensors have 2 ground pickups, not 1 but 2. Maybe that's partially why they're hum canceling. I don't know. Again, just trying to show again. The bad soldering job. The orange cap in this instance, I believe it's supposed to be a 22 that they're supposed to use on strats, but in this case it's a 47. So if I understand correctly, that might filter out dark. People can correct me if I'm wrong anyways. Again, can see this gap here that I was telling you about before. Sometimes it can be an issue. So people also wondering about this chaotic mess of like wires and so forth going on. If you remember me saying, this is actually not a push-pull, but it's a push-push, which they say is there's reliability issues. We'll see. And everything else, in theory, has been wired into position. And everything should be copacetic. And lastly, reason why the wiring looks so chaotic down here, and also with the tap is I have done with the help of the diagram from 920D Customs. This should be 7-way switching when I'm done. So with that said, let's move on from this. These will have to be cut shorter once they're ran through to the jack. And let's talk about that for a quick second. So as you can see here, I've already removed screws from the pickguard. Also, to get the strings out, I had to remove the back plate. So in that sense, you can see that these guitars have a nice thick block in them. This guitar originally had the trapezoid thing going on, but you know, people insist it makes a difference. To me, it don't make jack diddly squat, because I mean, with the 3 springs going across this way, there's more balance. So when you're pushing your trim down like this, you're getting pressure from all these points. The problem with doing the trapezoid kind of triangle thing is there's no balance on these outer. So you run into that limitation of, instead of bending the tremolo and having it go equally, you could have the tendency to have the one tremolo, or sorry, the tremolo actually want to tilt up on this side or tilt up on that side more than normal. So that's why I say I don't believe in the instance of doing the thing, because while people make the argument that it balances the tremolo or vibrato, whatever you want to call it, the reality is it's more in equal proportion when you have the two outer ones like this and the one middle one like this. If you want to be that paranoid about the bridge not being balanced, just put 5 really light gauged springs in the trem and it's perfectly balanced. Or maybe even you can do 2 heavy ones like I've seen some people do. For some reason the springs in this seem to be pretty heavy, because I have a fairly hard time to do this compared to, say, my Wilkinson trim on my made in Mexico throw together guitar. So with that said, and we're 11 minutes in, once you got your screws off, you have a couple things to think about. One, your output jack. Do you want to use a new one, or do you want to use the existing one? So in that instance, if you happen to be lucky enough to have enough wire, you can pull it out and take a look. In this instance, the jack doesn't seem to be that bad, so to save time and also save yourself a part if you haven't actually bought one, or unless you got one sitting around, in this instance, all we're going to want to do is basically reheat the solder and pull the wires, and it should be as simple as that. So this should be up enough, and as you can see, just gotta gently pull on it, and that one's loose, and this one again heat up the solder. And keep gently pulling it. Also, you shouldn't necessarily mess around with solder on top of your guitar body, because it will drop onto your finish and ruin it. Unless you really don't care, then it's not so much of an issue. And let's be honest, some people out there love the relic look. Well, drop of solder would definitely give the relic look. So just to be sure, we're gonna take this wire wall here and we're gonna clean the tip off. Make sure we got any old solder As Ben would say, smell the heat. And we're going to reapply it again just to... And of course, just because we want this to actually be hot, it's gone cold. So, let's just give this a few minutes to reheat back up. So make sure to have it. It's bad that I'm putting it on a bath towel, but also at the same time I have it on a stand. And if you have enough of a bath towel with enough grip to it, you really don't have to worry about the solder iron moving around much. So, what else can we do while we wait a few more minutes for that to desolder, or the soldering iron to heat up more? And well, it was on my thumb and finger, but so I don't know how well you can see that, but that is a speckle of solder that did come off. We'll wipe that off over there. So again, see if it's up to temp. There we go. Again, once it's up to temperature, you can take it, and my advice, if you do leave solder, use the heat and kind of move it back around into place without damaging or burning the part. So that actually is ready. And in this instance, that will require a quick blob of solder. Oh, actually it's on the inside. But even in this instance, we can see difference of the solder in this even compared to what I've done here. So with this, let's just put this out of the way and this back onto the stand very carefully. Also, if it has a screw like this, you can see there, try to leave it on the stand to make sure that it doesn't come down. Now, 18 minutes in, let's go back to looking at the pickguard and getting it out of the way now. So now, remember that this is a 22 fret neck, and in doing so, you will see that there is a very small little lip there that will actually interfere with the pickguard coming off. So what we will do in that instance then is we will lift up the pickguard and slowly pull it out, and it should come out. So at the same time, we can take our leads for our jack output, and we can check our hole and make sure we have our hole big enough to put the two output lines to. So, in case people wanted to know, there's basically what the HH humbucker pickguard looks like. So now we have two interesting things going on here at this point. So now we have a two ground situation. So they're both grounded to the volume pot. So we got one that's grounded to the shielding inside the body, and this second cable here goes actually out to the tremolo. Let me try to lift it up here so it's a little bit better. So two ground wires. Ground wire 1 to the trim, ground wire 2 to the body. So we got to figure out how much length we got and where we want to put them, and we also want to put them together. So in this instance, since we're now done with the ground, we're going to want to put our ground wires in the best possible place. Again, take our heated soldering iron, very carefully heat up the solder on those points. Which for some reason the soldering iron is kind of being a little flaky. I do feel the heat coming from it. So, pulling them off by reheating the solder is probably your ideal situation. Worst case scenario, going in with the clippers and carefully snipping off the points as close as possible to the solder. So, now that we got that freed, we can kind of take a better look at this pickguard and switch. And while you can see my soldering is not Fender perfect or Fender Mexico perfect, it's not that far off. And all the pots that were used on this are interesting. Never heard of this brand. Focus, you damn can. JS 500s. JS 500K A, JS 500K A, and a JS 500B. So, and that's basically that. And for those interested about the humbuckers in it, not much info on them, but There's the focus. I got a little bit of shakes because of coffee, so I'll have to excuse that. So now we got that in place and out of the way. Now, take a little break, have some water, have a slight bit of coffee. Don't drink too much coffee because, again, when you're doing soldering and whatnot, you definitely don't want to be messing around with the having the shakes like this. Having the shakes like this is not good for soldering or even cutting to a certain degree. So anything that's caffeine or energy drink, you probably want to stay from when doing your guitar electronics. So now we're at the point we got 2 grounds that have been cut off. So we need to very carefully reach over here, come to our little trusty wire strippers and try to move up and off. As much material without removing the wire as possible. Good amount there. Just drop it on your Now, I normally would only use the trem wire, but in this instance, I'm just going to double down and make sure that I have 2 sources of ground, which can be both a good and a bad thing. This is being a real pain in the derriere to want to strip, but we want to strip enough wire off that when we match the wires together, we're going to get a proper ground. So there we go. So there's that. I'm sure you can't see it focus that well, but I'm going to take both of our ground wires and twist them together very, 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 very carefully, gently. So now on this, now, problem with this two-way pot is, or push-push pot, or split pot, whatever you want to call it, is there's already a ground here for an overall master ground wire between all 3 pots. I cut out a little bit of a section here to actually put that in place against that pot. So I have all 3 wires. Again, which is also why this looks a mess, because I've got excess wire because I want to be sure that I had enough wire to run from the one stage to the other. It's never a bad thing to have excess wire going from stuff, except for maybe in that instance. So in this case, we actually have a top section. Let's just be sure that this is bent and out of the way. I do see a little bit of a wire going between the two leads. That could pose an issue for switching or enabling, so let's pull that up and over and out of the way. By the way, I've never wired into little teeny weeny pot things like this, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the pickguard semi into position, and we are going to look at putting one up and through, and then the second up and through possibly. Or again, twisting them together to make sure they're both connected to each other and that they can go up and through the little hole. And as long as they can both come up and through, bend over. So actually, you do get to see a little bit of soldering here. To those that were like, oh. So I'm just running it over just to make sure I got enough that's making contact with the actual inner casing of the pot and the hole. See, when it works, it actually works. So we got our grounds connected to our ground. Now we want to take our two this is push wire, in case people have never seen it. You basically can push the jacketing back to expose the wire. So now, because we're not doing it with one wire, we're doing it with two, we're going to, there's a fair size hole here, so that's awesome. We're going to take our wire, pull it through, flip this over, put this into position. And if everything is right, we now have our pickguard and wires and such in place. And now it's just a matter of snipping off the right amount. And we don't want to go too short, but we don't want to go too long. So just a quick reference again. What these are. This instance, black is our ground, white is our positive. So, again, referencing our chart, and let us then measure out our wire. We'll go with a safe amount and go with such. I must say, pushback wire like this is nice, but it is also a pain in the arse for when you do cut it off like that. So, now that that's in place, now again we go, and because we can do our pushback to raw wire, as you can kind of see here a little bit. Let me show it up close more. So a little bit of solid wire sticking out. We do that on that. And we do the same on the white. Just push them back enough. And so again, clean any excess solder you have that might have dropped off. You can see here there's a little bit that's fallen down into the ring. And so our inner ring is our ground. So in that instance, we want our black to be part of the inner ring. So in this instance, being a bit ambidextrous is a good thing. So sure enough, I get the solder in place, and of course the thing moves. Ah. Yes, people are probably going OCD at this point. They're like going, "You're screwing it up, man, you're screwing it up." Not supposed to blow, but it blew. Ooh. So there is solder point 1 to the inner ring with the ground. And next, solder point 2, which in this instance we will loop actually back around. And very, very carefully drop solder in place. So there is solder point 2 to the output jack. Points 1.2. And we'll take this and we'll carefully pull it back through. Or push/pull. Might help if I put it the right way. So let's put the screws back in place for this. Output jack won't be the issue if there's no sound. It'll be the other points. So that in place. That in place. Move things down and into the pickguard. Make sure the cables aren't getting intertwined here as much. So, okay. We've now got this in place. Still think the white tip looks a little out of place, but yeah. So what do you do once everything is roughly in place? We try it. So put everything up to 10. Let's go turn on our trusty amp. Sound. And a lot of hum. Not even plugged in yet. But So we'll know if everything's right once we plug in. We have no sound. Middle position. We have middle. We have neck. Do we have bridge? We have those positions. Do we have 2 and 3? Do we have neck and middle? Now, will our 7-way switch work? Yes, we have successfully done 7-way switch, because the 7-way switch, and yes, our tone capacitor will actually darken. So there we have it. So far we have volume works. We have our 3-way. Our 3 pickups are active in the number 2 position, number 1 position, telly style, non-telly mode when pushed in. Pushed in, regular position, popped out, the 7-way positions enabling neck to come in with bridge only, or in the 2 position, the bridge in the middle. So, that said, so that's an interesting thing that came out. Bottom tone is now a middle and bridge tone. Interesting. In the 2 position. And of course in the 1 position. So, before I end this and whatnot, so far so good. Looks like everything is in order. That all I gotta do now is take the last level of plastic off, screw everything down, put the pickups up to the appropriate range, which with lace sensors there to come up as close to the string as possible, like an EMG, because they don't have a singular up-down field, they have a multiple field. And I will be giving the fretboard another good polish. Fret polish with the fret erasers I got, and another good oil with the beeswax based oil. So with that said, and 50-minute mark going on, hope you have all enjoyed the video. thanks if you have actually stuck around these 50 minutes to actually, fully watch it and see it. And next video I should have posted should be the guitar restrung up, cleaned up, and set up. I will be putting a set of my normal Ernie Ball slinkies on it, except I will be going with the Cobalt Super Slinkies, so 9 through 42s. I'm not going to do the small strings on this. Eventually my other guitar that you normally see me play, the white beige one, it will be the one that ends up getting the really, really light gauge strings. So, hopefully when I'm back, this is all cleaned up, done, and everything is set to go. With that said, as soon as you're done anything with your soldering iron, unplug it. Don't accidentally leave it on. Try to use it as little as possible. With that said and out of the way, it's me, Terry, the moderator, the co-host, the person who's been on YouTube since 2009, 2010. Take care. Thanks again. I'll catch you later. Bye for now.